coming off of now just about 2 weeks removed from WrestleMania, and there's been some interesting stuff that's made me want to go back a little bit on WrestleMania, specifically talking about what happened on SmackDown this past week. We had an amazing tables, ladders, and chairs match in which the Street Profits retained the SmackDown Tag Team Championships in a main event this past week, and making a lot of people wonder, should something like that have been on the WrestleMania card? And Brandon, I want to kind of ask you this question and kind of divulging deep. And we talked last week a little bit about The Rock and his lack of involvement at WrestleMania. We obviously didn't get into too much of a deep dive into the sponsorship of WrestleMania. And obviously we know 2 nights of WrestleMania means that there's got to be lots of matches. Sometimes they don't fit on the card. So I want to kind of take this segment, and we're going to talk a little bit about this WrestleMania, but maybe to see if it's been a part of WrestleManias in the past, if it's new, if it doesn't even exist. And what I mean by that is, Brandon, this is going to be the highlight of the video. This is going to be what we're going to call this video, and that is WrestleMania anymore? And where I want to kind of get you to, because you're probably like, what the hell does that mean? So here's what I'm going to ask for you, right? WrestleMania, what WrestleMania means to you, what it meant to me forever, and that is the Super Bowl of wrestling, the Stanley Cup of wrestling, the NBA Finals of wrestling, the World Cup of wrestling, the championship caliber event, in which is the culminating event, in which is the highlight of the best storylines, the best matches. If there was only one championship a year, like what WWE did kind of do with Crown Jewel, where it was champion versus champion last year, that kind of idea is, Andre versus Hogan, Rock versus Cena, Rock versus Hogan, the best of the best. But this past year at WrestleMania, and the reason I kind of preface it in this whole thing with the tables, ladders, and chairs matches, that was an awesome, probably WrestleMania maybe caliber match. But the tag team match we got at WrestleMania was the War Raiders versus the New Day. And word's starting to get out that match was on the WrestleMania card, because the War Raiders look a lot like cartoon versions of a sponsorship that was involved at this past year's WrestleMania, and being Clash of Clans. In fact, if you notice, the championship match at WrestleMania was called the Tag Team Championship Clash, and a lot of people are saying that match made it on the WrestleMania card for sponsorship reasons, and wasn't necessarily a match that was going to be on WrestleMania, but because of trying to get a sponsorship involved. And we saw dirt bikes involved in Cody Rhodes' entrance, which could have something to do with a sponsorship. We saw the drumstick sponsorship when it comes to ice cream for the main event between John Cena and Cody Rhodes. And going into Backlash, we see Randy Orton and John Cena in a one last time match, which a lot of people would say, boy, if I was booking WrestleMania and trying to just give you a dream matchup, what we're getting at Backlash might be what we would have got at WrestleMania. I know going back a few years ago, we got Brock versus Bobby Lashley at Elimination Chamber, which didn't happen at WrestleMania. So I guess my question, so to wrap all of these kind of theories and ideas, WrestleMania, is it the Super Bowl of wrestling in what we think of the Super Bowl of wrestling, or is it a WrestleMania? Is it a wrestling festival? Is it just like celebration of wrestling? Not necessarily the best of the best, not necessarily the greatest matches of the year, not necessarily, is it not like we need to save that for WrestleMania when it comes to if we got a big match? If Goldberg came back and challenged Brock to a retirement match, would you say we need to save that for WrestleMania? Or would you say that's not really what WrestleMania is all about?
That's a good question. It's so the WrestleMania that I grew up with, it was focused on getting the best storylines, the best matches on the card. And then obviously you sprinkle in some sort of, celebrity involvements and whatnot and what have you and everything. We didn't really have that this year. Like Travis Scott, I'm not going to count that because he didn't, there wasn't really, it wasn't that big of a moment for me. Like usually we get some some star power there. Like we've had Snoop Dogg there in the past. The late great Pete Rose.
But even those people weren't involved in the main event match.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It to me, I guess it's almost like a celebration of wrestling more so than the Super Bowl of wrestling, I guess, because, yes, do we have more impressions because of social media and Netflix and, being worldwide? Yes, but we didn't have that Cyndi Lauper kind of moment from back in the day. Like the Cyndi Lauper, like we you've seen the different documentaries that have talked about how important having, like that, Cyndi Lauper, like Mr. T, having those type of personalities involved in WrestleMania, that kind of pushed it into the mainstream. Yes, I get we're mainstream now, but we're not getting that big of a celebrity crossover per se. So for me, I guess it's more of like a celebration of wrestling, but we missed the mark because Motor City Machine Guns and Dawkins and oh my goodness, I can't think of his name right off the top of my head.
Montez Ford.
Montez, thank you. The Street Profits. They put on a hell of a show this
and
past
DIY.
Week. They put to me, that's a WrestleMania caliber match together. And Wade Barrett, by the way, kind of teed it up pretty well and said these guys are showing out because they wanted to be on the WrestleMania card, and it didn't happen. So it's kind of WrestleMania overall, like we talked about, last week. It was a good show. It was a good wrestling show. You were there. It seemed, on TV, it was good, but it's lost its luster from the non-wrestling star appeal, I guess, is where I'm going.
Yeah, I think I think of Hogan and Rock, right, when they're like looking eye to eye and the crowd's going crazy, and those kind of things is what you think of a WrestleMania. I mean, Andre and Hogan, right? That is WrestleMania. But nowadays, obviously, we not just talking about like the price of tickets, but just in general, every kind of event is hyped up pretty large in general. And there doesn't seem to be any pay-per-views that are forgotten about. I mean, John Cena and Randy Orton is going to happen at Backlash. That is a classic confrontation. That is a more classic confrontation in my eyes than John Cena and Cody Rhodes, right? And I just feel like this match that we're about to get at Backlash, not saying it's going to be the greatest match, but just this, like, similar to what we got at Backlash during COVID, right? When they did the greatest match of all time, Edge versus Randy Orton, right? But they didn't give us that, greatest wrestling match ever kind of. I know obviously they gave it to us at WrestleMania, but they didn't present it in that way at WrestleMania. And I've also noticed too, in the past, not even just a couple of years, but kind of even going back over a couple of decades, a lot of times we'd get a match at WrestleMania that would be good, but then they would hype it up and amp it up for like the next pay-per-view where it might actually be better. Then we're going to make it Hell in a Cell, then we're going to make it Iron Man, we're going to do those kind of things. And it kind of just makes me realize, I don't know if it's, maybe we've been fooling ourselves this whole time and WrestleMania has never been, or at least, in the 12-a-year pay-per-view era, isn't really made to be the headline of events when it comes to the in-ring action. Because, what we saw this year specifically with the sponsorships really trying to just shoehorn their way into everything. And I think that's really, it's not just a TLC match was WrestleMania caliber and didn't get on the card, but to find out that a tag team match got on the card to appeal to sponsors mostly, like not because it deserved to be on the card from a story perspective, but because we wanted to get it on the card because of an ad placement, really makes you wonder, like, is WrestleMania really the showcase of the Immortals if you're getting on the card because, hey, you guys are a group that looks like a video game we're trying to sell, so we need to get you on the card. Those kind of things.
And by the way, it wasn't a bad match either. Like it wasn't what we saw on SmackDown this past week, but it wasn't a terrible match. I thought it was a decent match. The New Day usually puts out a pretty good show when they're out there, like their whole new heel persona. I feel like it's taking time to simmer, kind of like how in the beginning of New Day back in the day, nobody liked it, and then it was so over like Grover. this heel run, I still think it's still a work in progress. I think they're still trying to find that ground. But I think the New Day, they put on a decent showing, and then the Eric and Ivar, the War Raiders, I felt like they did a good job as well. So I mean, yeah, the match itself I thought was decent, and I agree with you. Like the whole sponsorship thing is a little funky to me, but at least kudos to those boys for putting all four of those guys putting on a decent match. Was it the level of what we saw on SmackDown? No, but at least it was still a quality match. Like those guys are all pros, but again, it kind of leads to that point where WWE, they always brag about the money. Here's another example of it's about the money more so than anything else, it seems like.
Yeah, and obviously we were talking last week a lot about The Rock's influence, him not showing up at WrestleMania. And there's been a lot of stuff coming out lately regarding, The Rock and Triple H. Triple H is head of creative. And then The Rock came out and publicly on the Pat McAfee show said all the things that he did, which not just rubs the fans the wrong way, but kind of does subtly. I mean, we don't have Triple H's side of it, but I mean, the fact that Ari Emanuel, according to The Rock, right, went to The Rock and said, we need you to sell tickets, instead of going to Triple H to say, hey, we need you to amp up the creative aspect, maybe, kind of going above Triple H to try to shoehorn in something that, because clearly The Rock wasn't scheduled to be there from Triple H's creative standpoint. So Triple H, can't say, hey, this is what we had planned all along. Triple H even said, going all the way back to the thing that kind of is the catalyst of this, and this is The Rock showing up on the Netflix debut, Triple H said he didn't script that. He didn't know what he was going to say, right? So kind of, Triple H creating this card, creating the stories, and then The Rock just kind of coming in there and going over Triple H's head and going over, a lot of these people who are working hard to create these shows' head to kind of just make up a story that doesn't fit in the Triple H creative at all because he's not creating it. So just make up a story and just go, I know you guys, I do your Elimination Chamber. Go ahead, just do it. But I'm going to come out and I'm going to create a story here that's going to, where are you going? Because I could almost maybe assume that before all of this, John Cena, Cody Rhodes was going to happen at WrestleMania, maybe face versus face. And maybe that's happened, and maybe it turned, and Triple H had to create this heel persona and had to do all this stuff based on The Rock. Just wanted to be like, hey, I'm going to show up at Elimination Chamber, and this is what I'm going to do. But I'm not going to follow it up at all. That's your job. So it's just, you wonder a lot of these things, and WrestleMania was the culmination of all of it, especially with the sponsorships in the ring. To what point do we boil over here? Because in 2018, I had to tell this to somebody recently, it's hard to believe, 2018, they got 2,500 people for Stomping Ground pay-per-view in Tacoma, Washington, and had to tarp off a lot of seats. Had to do a lot of buy two, get two free kind of situation. That's not that long ago. And listen, and WWE seems to be hot right now, but hey, WWE was really hot in 1999 as well. Wrestling goes in ebbs and flows, and people are saying, hey, it's at a high right now, but like anything else, it just can't stay at that level. It's just impossible to do that. SummerSlam is going to be 2 nights this year. Obviously, I think we saw when it comes to ticket sales with WrestleMania and the ticket prices, a lot of people were finally speaking up, and you just kind of wonder when it starts to go back down, and the bubble starts to burst, if you will, just how far we can take this matches created for sponsorship only kind of thing. Just how far we can take $1,000 to get in the door kind of ticket prices.
Well, here's I mean, you kind of just sparked an idea in my head when you were saying that. WWE likes their money just like any other business. I understand that. That's that's part of the gig. You want to make money, you want to be profitable. I get all that. But at the same time, you're pricing so many people out of for tickets because the prices are so high. So for me, the first thing that pops in my head after what you just said is they need to start doing, I know they're doing a lot of stuff like sponsorships, but maybe they gotta. I know this is gonna this will frustrate people. Maybe this will frustrate you, but maybe they have to pull the I don't know if you've seen Major League. You're a baseball fan. I think it was Major League 2, I believe it was, where they put like billboards on every single piece of the wall in the outfield. It's kind of like they may have to do that with matches. Like they may
they
have
are
to, like,
doing that with matches. I mean,
well, I
the
mean,
ring
more so
at
like,
WrestleMania was more covered than it's
but it
ever
could
been
be,
before.
but it could be like this match. I know they do it like segmentally, like on like Raw and SmackDown, but maybe they have to have certain like Snickers, Mountain Dew. Like every match has like a sponsor where they can make as much money as possible, so they can bring the tickets.
They already kind of do that though, right? The main event was sponsored by Xfinity.
But I mean, like, I'm
obviously
saying
that tag
for
team
every
match
match.
was sponsored by Clash of Clans. The main event was also sponsored by. I think the main event on Saturday was Xfinity. The main event was sponsored by Drumstick, the John Cena Cody Rhodes match. But just obviously the fact that the entrance for like Cody Rhodes, a lot of people were like, what does that have to do with anything? And then all of a sudden they were starting to see that there was some sort of sponsorship involved for like a mobile game. That is a reason for that, right? So it's those kind of things.
It is smart though. Like you're integrating. I mean, I know it can be frustrating for us, the fans and the viewers and all that, but I think the one way to tackle the higher ticket prices is you got to sell as much real estate, so to speak, as possible, make as much money there as you can, and then maybe they'll. I mean, we'll see if the business on the business
you're
side.
saying like TKO has to charge this price, and if they don't, they have to find the money. They don't have to do this. I mean, you go back to 2018. Tickets for floor seats at WrestleMania were $15,000, and they also didn't have that sponsorship level. So, and they made a profit because it existed and it looked like it looked. But the problem
is, though, they're so braggadocious about it now. Like Triple H has gone on. We've talked about it before.
Exactly. So the bubble's going to burst because you can only break these records so much. And I agree.
But the point is, though, I guess the point is, WWE, I mean, it's just like any business. They want to make as much money as possible. But I think like you said, that bursting bubble part, that point, so to speak, I feel like it's going to happen for ticket prices. But I feel like the way WWE, or I should say TKO, they alleviate maybe the lack of money because they're giving back to the fans. Maybe they'll start doing stuff like that, like they're giving back, is on the back end. They're going to sell even more than what they already do, which is, I'll be honest, they corner every piece of the market as they can. But I'll give them credit. Seeing a lot of that. I've been in sales in previous, in previous life, in previous portions of my life, and how they sell things. Kudos to WWE. But you are right. There is a bubble bursting point where I think it's going to happen with the ticket prices at some point. But WWE is still going to be greedy enough where they're still going to overdo it so they can still make the money.
And I'm just wondering, because this WrestleMania this year, right, it's not the first under TKO or anything like that, but it really felt like this WrestleMania woke up a lot of people in what is going to be very curious to see, like going into SummerSlam, which is a 2-night event this year, going into WrestleMania next year. It's going to be very curious to see in the sense of, because WrestleMania this year, as we kind of alluded in this whole topic, did not feel like WrestleMania when it comes to how they were trying to present it. It was like you're going to get John Cena and Cody Rhodes without the greatest story, and this isn't Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. That was a WrestleMania main event that you'd expect. This isn't even John Cena and Randy Orton, which is a classic of two veterans one last time. You're getting John Cena and Cody Rhodes because John Cena is a big name, because Drumstick Nestle is sponsoring this match, and you're getting this tag team match based on this sponsorship as well. You might get a wrestler pulled off the card if another wrestler seems to be selling some merch differently than, like, we're trying to sell this shirt, so maybe that's more important. And I wonder if, because of this year being such a high ticket, this year ticket prices were never more apparent than they've ever been before. So you're wondering if maybe fans are waking up and going, hold on a minute, you charged me Super Bowl ticket prices. You gave me an event that was more of just a celebration of wrestling, and where we, instead of what we thought was going to be the greatest matches you could possibly give us. And I wonder if next year going into New Orleans, people are going to be more mindful of that and saying, this isn't the once in a lifetime match main event. This is $15,000, but the main event could be Joe Hendry versus Randy Orton because it's going to be a pop versus Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes in the biggest main event you've ever seen kind of thing. So I wonder if, like I said, and I'm very curious, SummerSlam this year is 2 nights. What are you going to pull out matches that are like, that is the best of the best, or is it going to be also just, hey, it's a fun time to go out? The main event of night 1 is for the SmackDown tag team titles. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I will say this though, to that point, and I said this last week, I feel like the depth in the women's division is at an all-time high right now. Like, we've talked about it over the years. We've been doing this for, close to a decade almost at this point. And the way the women's wrestling has evolved, and to me, when I watch a lot of these programs, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, or any of these premium live events, more times than not, I feel like the women's matches steal the show. So, I feel like there's going to be, like SummerSlam, I feel like there's going to be a lot more women's matches than you would expect. They sprinkle it in, but I feel like the women's side of things right now, in some regards, is more entertaining than what the guys are putting out.
Right now, SummerSlam tickets are on sale. It is during the pre-sale period, but people are pre-sale. It's just like one of those things that you should know better if you're trying to buy tickets for any of these things. Pre-sale is regular sale. I guess the only difference is maybe prices can be different when it comes to regular sale, but I mean, everyone has access to the pre-sale. It's not some sort of exclusive small group. Everyone who has access to the general has access to the pre-sale. And by the time the general goes on sale for like WrestleMania, specifically this past year, the best seats are gone. So, the idea is that after the pre-sale's over, and in past years after the pre-sale's over, most of the tickets are gone for like WrestleMania, right? It's kind of, that's the general sale. And the reason I say this is because it's not sold out. It's not even close to sold out. Looking at ticket maps after they've been on sale for a better part of 8 hours, there's large chunks of tickets for sale. The prices are much more reasonable than WrestleMania. I will say that. It's still going to be expensive, but for a 2-night event, to be honest with you, it's not what you'd expect. Right now, the cheapest ticket to get in SummerSlam, and I say it's the cheapest ticket, it's not the best ticket, but to get in the door for 2 nights, it's going to cost you $65 a night. So that is
not terrible.
That is not terrible. And you're wondering if that is kind of because again, we're booking SummerSlam in just the time we've been doing this. SummerSlam was a 1-night arena event, and now it's a 2-night stadium event. Yep. So it's going to be a real question mark about like WWE know what they're doing. This is 2 nights in a stadium. You know what I mean? What can you charge? What kind of crowd can you attract? And it's not WrestleMania. People know that, so it's kind of ballsy. Because WrestleMania 2-night was a risk, right? WrestleMania, going 2 nights for WrestleMania, it reminds me a lot of going to WrestleMania in general, of like, hey, this is a risk. We're going to put on something that's either going to sink or swim. And 2 nights for not WrestleMania in a stadium nonetheless. You know what I mean? Like trying to get 80,000 twice, but for not WrestleMania, it's interesting. And I think just the idea is it could be an example of SummerSlam also not really being the WrestleMania of the summer. Last year, the main event of SummerSlam was Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa. And the year before, it was Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. And Jey Uso, great, he's champion now. But at the time, as we've learned, he wasn't necessarily what we see today. Because when he won the Royal Rumble and when he won the championship, a lot of people were looking at it like, wow, this guy has come from the bottom and now he's quote unquote a main eventer. But you forget they put him in the main event of SummerSlam. And a year later, Solo Sikoa against Cody Rhodes, Solo Sikoa might have had not on the card at WrestleMania. So just looking at those matches alone, and you're saying, well, that doesn't look like a WrestleMania main event. Solo Sikoa versus Cody Rhodes, right? That was, Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes at Royal Rumble seemed more like a main event. Drew McIntyre and CM Punk and Hell in a Cell seemed more like a main event that you'd expect at SummerSlam, and that was a Bad Blood. So I guess it's just like those main events are kind of good examples of like that was like Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. If you put of the most important matches during Roman Reigns' multi-year run, that's, I mean, not just not important after the fact, but that was like going into the fact of like, okay, that's not a match in which we think he's going to lose the belt. Roman Reigns has gone against John Cena. Roman Reigns has gone against Brock Lesnar. Roman Reigns has gone against Cody Rhodes. So Roman Reigns against Jey Uso, yeah.
It's almost like a backlash quality.
Yeah. And the month before was the Bloodline Civil War at Money in the Bank, which makes you be like, okay, so is SummerSlam trying to just give us, just another pay-per-view quality, or is it trying to give us a match that we've never seen before? Because the Bloodline Civil War, which I think was a bigger deal, in which Roman Reigns got his first pinfall loss in like 3 years, that was Money in the Bank. SummerSlam, we just got kind of like what you'd expect on the Raw after Money in the Bank, if you will. So that's why we kind of pose the question. WrestleMania, celebration of wrestling, just fun to be there, or is it the Super Bowl of wrestling? I guess, it's this year we wonder, are we going to get a follow-up? You know what I mean? Next year, are we going to finally get Rock and Roman, one last time? Or are we going to get, well, it's not going to be John Cena, right? But are we going to get, Cody Rhodes versus LA Knight, something like that. And I guess specifically to wrap up this whole subject is that I guess my main issue with Cody Rhodes and John Cena not feeling as big as John Cena versus Randy Orton, which is happening at Backlash, is the story just didn't seem to be there for John Cena and Cody Rhodes. Like, it wasn't like we had to see this match. We had to see it because one's the winner of the Elimination Chamber and one is the champion, but it didn't seem like we had to see this match from a storyline perspective. And like I said, going into WrestleMania 39, Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley, that happened at Elimination Chamber. What we got at WrestleMania was Brock Lesnar versus Omos and Bobby Lashley not on the card. So it makes you kind of wonder, like, okay, that seemed like it should have been in WrestleMania, but what we got was just a fun match at WrestleMania, not this, what we got at Elimination Chamber. So just made me kind of ponder the question, the sponsorship, the ticket prices, the reason why matches are on the card, not because they are the creme de la creme, but because they're being sponsored, right? And trying to sell a mobile app makes you have that question. Is WrestleMania being Andre versus Hogan a thing of the past? And is it more or less just, hey, let's get 60,000 people in an arena and just have a good time and put on some fun ideas of matches instead of trying to give you the definitive. And Triple H, I think, said it the best this year, right? Because every other year in the past he's talked about, or anybody's ever thought about WrestleMania being the definitive end of story. But Triple H, for the first time ever, I've never heard this from Vince, I've never heard this from Triple H before, said that what if WrestleMania is just the start of a story or the middle part of a story, kind of concluding that, yeah, WrestleMania maybe isn't what you thought it was in the past. Maybe we're just getting there to get us to the next level. Obviously, WrestleMania 39 got us to the following year's WrestleMania with Roman and Cody. So, that kind of opened my eyes to, wait, so are we even booking WrestleMania like WrestleMania, or are we just booking WrestleMania like the road to WrestleMania? So it just ponders that question, and it's worth definitely talking about. And, well, very curious going into next year's WrestleMania what things will look like. And maybe we'll be smarter next year when we go into next year's WrestleMania and to kind of look at it like this is just kind of the start and not the definitive end. Or maybe we'll go back to feeling like this is the showcase of the Immortals.